The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Windsor Castle as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood at her bedroom window, watching the gardeners tend to the rose garden below. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman who had aged gracefully through years of public service. But today something was different. There was a heaviness in her eyes, a weight that seemed to pull at her shoulders as she turned away from the window and moved toward her dressing table. William had left early for his royal duties, as he often did these days. The demands of their positions seemed to grow more intense with each passing year, pulling them in different directions despite their shared commitment to the crown and to each other. Catherine picked up a silver-framed photograph from her dresser, a candid shot from their early married years, both laughing at something long forgotten. Her fingers traced the glass gently before she set it back down. The palace had been unusually quiet lately. Staff members moved through the corridors with careful steps and hushed voices, as if sensing that something significant was approaching. Even their children seemed more subdued, picking up on the subtle tension that had settled over their home like morning fog. Catherine's lady-in-waiting knocked softly before entering. "Your Royal Highness, the car will be ready in 20 minutes for your visit to the Children's Hospital." Catherine nodded, applying her lipstick with practiced precision. These public appearances had become both a blessing and a burden, moments where she could focus on others and temporarily forget the growing distance she felt creeping into her marriage. At the hospital, Catherine moved through the pediatric ward with genuine warmth, stopping at each bedside to speak with young patients and their families. A 7-year-old girl named Emma tugged at Catherine's sleeve, wanting to show her a drawing she had made. The crayon artwork depicted a princess in a blue dress, surrounded by hearts and flowers. "That's beautiful, Emma," Catherine said, kneeling to the child's eye level. "Tell me about your princess." "She looks sad," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Even though she's pretty and has a nice dress, something is making her heart hurt." The innocent observation struck Catherine more deeply than she expected. Children often saw what adults tried to hide, their honesty cutting through pretense with startling clarity. Catherine spent an extra few minutes with Emma, listening to her chatter about her favorite stories and her dreams of becoming a nurse when she grew up. Meanwhile, across London, William was attending a meeting with Commonwealth representatives. The discussion centered around upcoming ceremonial duties and state visits, but his mind kept drifting to the conversation he had had with his father the previous evening. The king had spoken about duty, about sacrifice, and about the sometimes impossible balance between personal happiness and royal obligation. "The crown requires everything of us," his father had said, standing in his study surrounded by portraits of monarchs past. "But sometimes, William, it demands more than we think we can give." William had understood the subtext. His parents' marriage had been one of the most public relationships in modern history, scrutinized and analyzed until it ultimately crumbled under the pressure. Now, as he faced his own marital challenges, he wondered if history was destined to repeat itself. The meeting concluded with handshakes and formal pleasantries, but William lingered in the conference room after the others had left. Through the tall windows, he could see tourists gathered outside Buckingham Palace, cameras ready to capture any glimpse of royal life. How little they knew about the reality behind the fairy tale facade. That evening, William and Catherine found themselves at a state dinner honoring visiting dignitaries from Australia. They moved through the event with practiced ease, sharing conversations with guests, posing for photographs, and fulfilling their roles as perfect royal representatives. To onlookers, they appeared as they always had, united, gracious, and devoted to each other. But those closest to them noticed the subtle signs. The way Catherine's smile didn't quite reach her eyes during the speeches. How William's hand rested on his wife's back for just a moment too briefly when they posed for pictures. The polite distance they maintained throughout the evening, professional rather than intimate. During a quiet moment between courses, Catherine excused herself to the powder room. She stood before the ornate mirror, touching up her lipstick while fighting back tears that threatened to ruin her carefully applied makeup. This life, which had once seemed like a dream come true, now felt like an elaborate performance from which she couldn't find an exit. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Catherine." It was Camilla, the queen consort, her voice gentle with concern. "I'm fine," Catherine called back, though her voice betrayed her emotional state. Camilla entered quietly, closing the door behind her. Without words, she handed Catherine a tissue and stood beside her at the mirror. "You know, my dear, I understand more than you might think about the pressures of this life." Catherine looked at her mother-in-law's reflection, seeing compassion rather than judgment in her eyes. How do you do it? How do you keep going when everything feels so complicated? One day at a time, Camilla replied softly. And by remembering that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to hold on and when to let go. The words hung in the air between them, carrying a weight that Catherine felt settle in her chest. When they returned to the dinner, William noticed immediately that something had changed in his wife's demeanor. There was a resolution in her posture that hadn't been there before, a quiet strength that both worried and impressed him. Later that night, after the last guest had departed and they had returned to their private quarters, William and Catherine sat in their living room in comfortable silence. The children had long since gone to bed, and the palace had settled into its nighttime quiet. The dinner went well, William said finally, loosening his tie. Yes, Catherine agreed, though her mind was clearly elsewhere. She was thinking about Emma, the little girl at the hospital, and her simple observation about the sad princess. She was thinking about Camilla's words about love and letting go. Most of all, she was thinking about the growing realization that sometimes the most courageous thing to do was to admit when something wasn't working, even when that something was supposed to be forever. William, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw in her face the same truth he had been trying to avoid acknowledging. Their marriage, built on genuine love and shared dreams, had somehow become a casualty of the very institution they had pledged to serve. The conversation that followed stretched into the early hours of the morning. They talked about their children, about their duties, about the love they still shared, even as they recognized that love sometimes wasn't enough to bridge the growing chasm between them. They spoke of expectations and disappointments, of dreams deferred and sacrifices made. As dawn broke over Windsor, both William and Catherine knew that their lives were about to change in ways they had never imagined. The fairy tale that had captivated millions was approaching an ending that no one had written, least of all themselves. The morning brought new challenges and difficult decisions. Catherine stood again at her bedroom window, but this time she wasn't looking at the gardens below. Instead, she was looking toward a future that remained uncertain but felt, for the first time in months, authentically her own. William joined her at the window, and together they watched the sun rise over the castle grounds. They didn't speak. Words seemed inadequate for the magnitude of what they were contemplating. But, in the silence, there was an understanding that their greatest act of love for each other might be the courage to redefine what their relationship could become. The decision they were approaching would shock the world, disappoint millions of admirers, and challenge the very foundations of modern monarchy. But, as they stood together in the early morning light, both William and Catherine felt something they hadn't experienced in months. Peace with the possibility of change, even when that change meant saying goodbye to the life they had built together. Their final farewell was still to come, but already they could feel its approach, bringing with it both sorrow for what was ending and hope for what might begin. The weeks following their midnight conversation brought an unusual calm to William and Catherine's daily routine, as if acknowledging their situation had lifted a burden neither had realized they were carrying. They moved through their royal duties with renewed focus, each public appearance taking on deeper significance, knowing that their time as a couple in the public eye might be drawing to a close. Catherine threw herself into her charity work with unprecedented energy. At a women's shelter in East London, she sat with mothers who had fled difficult situations, listening to their stories of courage and resilience. One woman, Sarah, spoke about the moment she realized that staying in an unhappy marriage was teaching her children that love meant accepting less than they deserved. It wasn't that my husband was cruel, Sarah explained, cradling her infant daughter. We just grew apart. But I stayed because I thought that was what good mothers did. Then, I realized my daughter was watching, learning that this was what marriage looked like. Catherine found herself deeply moved by Sarah's honesty. What gave you the strength to leave? Understanding that sometimes love means choosing what's best for everyone, even when it breaks your heart, Sarah replied. My daughter deserves to see what real happiness looks like, not what we pretend it should be. That evening, Catherine shared the conversation with William as they sat in their private study. He listened thoughtfully, recognizing the parallels to their own situation. Their children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, had begun asking questions about why their parents seemed different lately, why there were more whispered conversations and closed-door meetings. Perhaps, William said carefully, we need to consider what example we're setting for them about marriage, about duty, about choosing happiness over expectation. Their children had always been their priority, and now they faced the complex challenge of protecting them while also being honest about the changes coming to their family. William remembered his own childhood, the confusion and pain of his parents' public breakdown, and was determined to handle their situation differently. The following day brought a scheduled visit to a primary school in Wales, where William and Catherine were greeted by hundreds of excited children waving small flags. The headmaster guided them through classrooms where young students had prepared presentations about the royal family. In one classroom, an 8-year-old boy named Liam raised his hand during question time. "Your Royal Highness," he said to Catherine, "my mummy and daddy got divorced, but they still love me and my sister. Do you think that's okay?" The question caught Catherine off guard, its innocent directness cutting through all the careful planning and protocol. She knelt down to Liam's level, very aware that cameras were capturing every moment of their interaction. "Liam, families come in many different forms," she said gently. "What matters most is that you feel loved and safe. Sometimes adults have to make difficult choices, but those choices are never about not loving their children." William watched from across the room, struck by his wife's grace under pressure and her ability to offer comfort while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Later, as they walked through the school's garden, he mentioned the interaction. "You handled that beautifully," he said. "I know it wasn't easy." "It made me realize how many children are dealing with family changes," Catherine replied. "We're not the only family facing difficult decisions." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of their private secretary, who needed to discuss upcoming engagements. The schedule seemed relentless: state dinners, charity galas, overseas visits, all planned months in advance with no consideration for personal circumstances. As they reviewed the calendar, both William and Catherine felt the weight of expectations that seemed impossible to fulfill while also addressing their marriage. That weekend, they retreated to Anmer Hall, their country home in Norfolk, seeking privacy and normalcy away from palace life. The children ran through the gardens with their dogs while William and Catherine prepared lunch together, a simple domestic scene that felt both precious and bittersweet. "I've been thinking about timing," Catherine said as she arranged flowers from their garden. "If we're going to make changes, we need to consider the children's school schedule, the upcoming Jubilee events, the Commonwealth tour." William nodded, understanding that even their separation would need to be carefully orchestrated around royal obligations. "We have a responsibility to the institution, but we also have a responsibility to ourselves and to the children." Their discussion was interrupted by Charlotte, who burst into the kitchen with grass stains on her dress and excitement in her eyes. "Mummy, Daddy, come see the butterfly house George built." They spent the afternoon admiring their children's creative projects, playing games on the lawn, and enjoying the rare luxury of unscheduled time together. Watching their children's carefree joy, both parents felt the weight of the decisions they faced. How do you protect that innocence while also being honest about adult realities? That evening, after the children had gone to bed, William and Catherine walked through their gardens as twilight settled over the countryside. The informal setting seemed to encourage more open conversation than the formal palace rooms where they usually discussed serious matters. "I've been thinking about what Sarah said at the shelter," Catherine said, stopping beside a bench they had installed years earlier. "About children learning what love looks like by watching their parents. What do you think they're learning from us right now?" William asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. "That love doesn't always look like fairy tales," Catherine replied. "But maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe they're learning that real love means wanting the best for each other, even when that's complicated." They sat on the bench, looking back at their house where warm lights glowed in the windows. It was a picture of domestic contentment that millions of people around the world envied. Yet both William and Catherine felt the disconnect between appearance and reality. "I love you," William said quietly. "That's never been in question." "I know," Catherine replied, taking his hand. "I love you too. But I think we both know that love alone isn't enough to fix what's happened between us." Their marriage had become a casualty of circumstances beyond their control. The relentless public scrutiny, the impossible expectations, the way their individual growth had taken them in different directions despite their best efforts to stay connected. The following week brought a series of challenging events. A tabloid newspaper published speculation about their marriage based on anonymous sources, forcing their press office to issue careful denials that satisfied no one. Catherine attended a charity luncheon where well-meaning friends asked probing questions about her happiness, their concern masked as social conversation. William found himself in an even more difficult position during a meeting with his father and stepmother. The king's advisors were concerned about potential impact on the monarchy's stability if rumors of marital problems proved true. The institution has survived many challenges, the king said carefully. But we must consider timing, presentation, the impact on public confidence. William felt torn between loyalty to his family's legacy and loyalty to his wife and children. What if the greatest service we can provide to the institution is demonstrating that the monarchy can adapt to modern realities? The suggestion hung in the air, revolutionary in its implications. For centuries, royal marriages had been expected to endure regardless of personal cost. The idea that a future king might prioritize emotional well-being over traditional expectations challenged fundamental assumptions about duty and sacrifice. Later that day, William called Catherine to share the conversation. She listened without surprise, having expected that institutional concerns would eventually override personal considerations. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I want to do what's right for our children, for you, for me, and for the country," William replied. "I'm just not sure those things are compatible anymore." That evening, they attended a gala for one of Catherine's patronages, a children's mental health organization. During her speech, Catherine spoke about the importance of emotional honesty and the courage required to seek help when facing difficult circumstances. Her words resonated with the audience, but those who knew her well understood the personal context behind her message. "We teach our children that it's okay to ask for help," she said, looking out at the assembled crowd. "We tell them that strength sometimes means admitting when something isn't working. Perhaps we adults need to remember those lessons too." After the event, as they drove back to the palace, William reached for Catherine's hand. "Whatever we decide," he said, "we decide together. No pressure from advisors, no concern about public opinion. Just what feels right for our family." Catherine squeezed his hand, grateful for his support even as they contemplated a future that might see them living separate lives. Together, she agreed, knowing that their unity in facing this challenge might be the last gift they could give each other as husband and wife. The car pulled through the palace gates, returning them to a world of duty and expectation. But something had shifted during their evening together. They had found a way to support each other through an impossible situation, demonstrating that love could take many forms, even when traditional marriage was no longer sustainable. Their final farewell was approaching, but it would be marked by mutual respect rather than bitterness, by shared concern for their children rather than public recrimination. In choosing to face their challenges together, they were discovering a new way to love each other, even as they prepared to say goodbye. The decision to seek professional guidance came after a particularly difficult week when even their closest staff members began noticing the strain. Catherine suggested they speak with Dr. Rebecca Morrison, a counselor who specialized in high-profile couples facing unique pressures. The discretion required for such sessions meant meeting at a private location away from palace grounds. Dr. Morrison's office in central London provided a neutral space where William and Catherine could speak without the weight of royal protocol. For the first time in months, they sat as simply William and Catherine, not as future king and queen, not as public figures, but as two people trying to navigate an impossible situation. "What brought you both here today?" Dr. Morrison asked, her voice gentle but direct. Catherine spoke first. "We love each other, but we're not sure that's enough anymore. The life we're living, the expectations, the pressure, it's changed us both in ways we didn't expect." William nodded, adding, "We have 3 children who deserve parents who are genuinely happy, not just going through the motions. But we also have responsibilities to millions of people who look to us for stability and continuity." The session continued for nearly 2 hours, touching on topics they had avoided discussing even with each other. They talked about their individual dreams that had been set aside for royal duty, about the loneliness of public life, about their children's future, and the legacy they wanted to leave. "I used to think duty meant sacrifice," Catherine admitted. "But lately I wonder if genuine service might require being honest about our humanity, showing people that it's possible to make difficult choices with integrity." Dr. Morrison challenged them to consider what success looked like in their unique circumstances. Traditional measures, staying married, maintaining public appearances, fulfilling royal duties, might not be the most authentic or helpful approach for their family or for the institution they served. Walking back to their car after the session, both William and Catherine felt something they hadn't experienced in months: clarity. Not about what they would do, but about what questions they needed to answer and how they might approach finding those answers. The following day brought an unexpected challenge when their eldest son, George, asked to speak with them privately after school. At 11 years old, he had developed an awareness of adult dynamics that sometimes caught his parents off guard. "Mummy, Daddy," he began, sitting between them in William's study. "Are you getting divorced?" The directness of his question left them momentarily speechless. Catherine recovered first, choosing honesty over deflection. "George, we're working through some grown-up problems." "Why do you ask?" "Tommy at school said his parents acted like you two before they got divorced," George explained matter-of-factly. They stopped holding hands and started having quiet conversations that stopped when he walked into the room. William looked at his son with new respect for his perceptiveness. "What would you think if Mummy and I decided we couldn't live together anymore, but still loved you very much?" George considered this carefully. "Would I still see you both?" "Every day that we possibly could," Catherine assured him. "Nothing would change about how much we love you, Charlotte and Louis." "Then, I think I would be okay," George said. "Tommy says his parents are much happier now, and he gets to see them both being real instead of pretending." That evening, after similar conversations with Charlotte and Louis, William and Catherine marveled at their children's resilience and wisdom. Charlotte had asked practical questions about housing arrangements and holiday traditions, while Louis, at 6, had simply wanted assurance that both parents would still read him bedtime stories. "They're stronger than we gave them credit for," Catherine observed as they prepared for bed. "Or maybe children are just better at accepting change when it's presented honestly," William replied. The next few weeks brought a series of final royal engagements that took on special significance, knowing they might be among the last they would complete as a married couple. A state visit from the Japanese emperor required extensive preparation and flawless execution, with William and Catherine working in perfect synchronization despite their personal circumstances. During a private moment at the state banquet, the emperor's wife, Empress Masako, approached Catherine with unexpected words of support. Having faced her own challenges adapting to royal life, she understood the unique pressures Catherine had experienced. "Your Royal Highness," the Empress said quietly, "I have watched your journey with great admiration. Whatever path you choose, remember that courage comes in many forms." The conversation reminded Catherine that their situation was not entirely unique. Royal families around the world had faced similar challenges, and some had found ways to modernize while maintaining dignity and service to their people. Meanwhile, William was dealing with increasing pressure from palace advisors who worried about the impact of potential separation on the monarchy's stability. Sir Edmund Hawtreyi, the king's private secretary, arranged a meeting to discuss contingency planning, a euphemism for damage control. "Your Royal Highness," Sir Edmund began carefully, "we must consider the constitutional implications of any changes to your domestic arrangements." William listened to the concerns about public confidence, media reaction, and parliamentary questions, but found himself increasingly frustrated by the institutional focus on appearances rather than authentic leadership. "With respect, Sir Edmund," William replied, "perhaps the monarchy's greatest strength could be its ability to demonstrate that modern leadership includes emotional intelligence and personal integrity, not just traditional duty." The meeting ended without resolution, but William left with a clearer understanding that any decision he and Catherine made would need to balance personal authenticity with institutional stability. That weekend, the family retreated again to Anmer Hall, where the gardens were beginning to show signs of autumn. Catherine spent Saturday morning teaching Charlotte how to press flowers, while William helped the boys build a treehouse that had been planned for months. "Will you still come here with us if you and Mummy don't live together?" Louis asked as he handed William a hammer. "As often as I possibly can," William assured him. "This will always be our family home, no matter what changes happen between Mummy and me." The simple question and answer captured the essence of what they were trying to achieve, maintaining family connections even as the structure of their relationship evolved. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, William and Catherine sat by the fireplace discussing practical matters that would need to be resolved. Housing arrangements, custody schedules, public appearances, charitable patronages, the logistics of separating two lives that had been completely intertwined for more than a decade. "I've been thinking about timing," Catherine said. "If we announce anything before Christmas, it overshadows the family celebration. But waiting until after the new year means starting fresh, which might be symbolically appropriate." William agreed, appreciating her thoughtfulness about impact on their extended family and the public who looked forward to royal holiday traditions. "What about our charitable work?" he asked. "Many of our patronages expect us to appear together. Perhaps this could be an opportunity to show that service to others doesn't require personal sacrifice," Catherine suggested. "We could demonstrate that people can work together effectively while living separate lives." Their conversation continued past midnight, covering everything from media strategy to their children's emotional needs. By dawn, they had outlined a framework for moving forward that prioritized their family's well-being while maintaining their commitment to public service. The plan they developed was unconventional but thoughtful, a gradual transition that would give their children time to adjust, a carefully worded public statement that emphasized mutual respect and continued cooperation, and a new model of royal service that acknowledged the reality of modern relationships. As autumn deepened into winter, both William and Catherine felt a sense of resolution about their future, even though it looked very different from the fairy tale they had once believed they were living. Their love for each other was transforming into something new, not romantic partnership, but deep friendship and shared commitment to their children and their country. Their final farewell as husband and wife was approaching, but it would be marked by grace rather than bitterness, by gratitude for what they had shared rather than regret for what they were ending. In choosing to face their challenges with honesty and dignity, they were writing a new chapter in the story of modern monarchy, one that might ultimately strengthen the institution they both loved by making it more authentically human. The Christmas season arrived with its usual pomp and ceremony, but this year carried an undercurrent of finality for William and Catherine. They had decided this would be their last Christmas as a married couple, and they were determined to make it meaningful for their children and families, even as they prepared for the announcement that would come in the new year. The traditional Christmas Eve service at Sandringham took on special significance. As they walked to church with their children, Catherine felt the weight of hundreds of eyes watching their every interaction. She and William had perfected the art of appearing united while privately acknowledging their separation. Their children, now aware of the coming changes, walked between them with the easy confidence that comes from feeling secure in their parents' love. During the service, Catherine found herself focusing on the themes of hope and renewal that characterized the Christmas season. The vicar's sermon spoke about finding light in darkness and the courage required to embrace change when it serves a greater purpose. She caught William's eye during the reading and saw the same recognition there. This message felt written specifically for their situation. After the service, the traditional walkabout among well-wishers provided both of them with genuine moments of connection to the people they served. An elderly woman named Margaret pressed Catherine's hand and whispered, "Whatever you're facing, dear, remember that love takes many forms." The comment stayed with Catherine throughout the day. During the family's Christmas dinner, surrounded by the warm chaos of multiple generations celebrating together, she watched William interacting with their children and felt grateful for the friendship that was emerging from their marriage's end. The king, observing his son and daughter-in-law throughout the celebration, pulled William aside later that evening for a private conversation in his study. "You're handling this with remarkable grace," his father said, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. "I know it's not easy, Catherine, and I have learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is admit when something isn't working," William replied. "We're trying to show the children that difficult decisions can be made with integrity. The institution will survive," the king assured him. "In fact, it might even be strengthened by your honesty. The monarchy has always been strongest when it reflects the realities of the times." Meanwhile, Catherine was having a similar conversation with her mother in one of Sandringham's many sitting rooms. Carol Middleton had watched her daughter navigate the complexities of royal life for over a decade and had seen the gradual changes in her happiness. "Are you at peace with this decision?" her mother asked directly. "More at peace than I've been in years," Catherine replied honestly. "William and I are giving each other permission to be authentic, and that feels like the greatest gift we can offer." The days between Christmas and New Year passed in a blur of family activities and final preparations. William and Catherine spent time creating memory books for each of their children, documenting their years as a family unit while emphasizing that family love continues even when family structure changes. On New Year's Eve, they attended a private party hosted by close friends who were aware of their situation. Surrounded by couples who had supported them through their marriage, William and Catherine found themselves able to relax and simply enjoy each other's company without the pressure of public performance. As midnight approached, They stood together on the terrace overlooking the host's gardens, watching fireworks light up the London sky. Any regrets? William asked quietly. About us? No, Catherine replied. We gave everything we had to this marriage and to our roles. Some things just run their course, and that's okay. At midnight, instead of the traditional kiss, they embraced as friends preparing to embark on separate journeys while remaining united in their commitment to their children and their service. January brought the careful orchestration of their announcement. William and Catherine worked closely with their communications teams to craft a statement that would be honest without being sensational, respectful without being defensive. They wanted to control their own narrative rather than letting speculation and rumor define their story. The statement, released on a Tuesday morning, was brief but comprehensive. Their Royal Highnesses the Prince and Princess of Wales have mutually decided to live separately while continuing their shared commitment to their children and their royal duties. This decision has been made with careful consideration and mutual respect. The Prince and Princess will continue to work together on their charitable endeavors and maintain their individual roles in service to the Crown and the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. The public reaction was immediate and intense. News channels interrupted regular programming, newspapers printed special editions, and social media exploded with commentary ranging from supportive to critical. William and Catherine had anticipated the storm and prepared their children for the attention that would follow. That afternoon, they sat together with George, Charlotte, and Louis to explain what the announcement meant for their daily lives. The children had questions, practical ones about living arrangements and emotional ones about family holidays, but their overall response was calmer than many adults. Will people be mean to you on television? Charlotte asked with the protective instincts of a child who had grown up watching her parents navigate public criticism. Probably some will be, Catherine admitted. But many people will understand that sometimes grown-ups need to make difficult choices. The days following the announcement brought an outpouring of public response that surprised everyone. While some commentators criticized their decision as abandoning duty, many more praised their honesty and their commitment to modern parenting principles. Letters poured into Kensington Palace from people sharing their own experiences with marriage, divorce, and blended families. A particularly moving letter came from a military wife whose husband had served with William, thanking them for showing her children that families could change structure while maintaining love. Catherine found herself especially moved by messages from women who had felt trapped in unhappy marriages by societal expectations. Their decision to prioritize emotional health while maintaining mutual respect had apparently given others permission to consider their own difficult choices. A week after the announcement, William and Catherine made their first public appearance since the separation at a charity event for homeless youth. They had debated whether to appear together, ultimately deciding that demonstrating their continued ability to work as a team served both the charity and the public interest. The event went smoothly, with both of them engaging naturally with the young people they met. When a teenage girl asked if they were sad about their separation, Catherine answered honestly. Change is always sad in some ways, she said. But we're not sad about choosing what's best for our family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone grow in their own direction. The photographer capturing the event noticed that William and Catherine seemed more relaxed than they had appeared in months. Without the pressure of maintaining a romantic facade, they were able to focus entirely on the people they were meeting and the causes they supported. Behind the scenes, the practical arrangements of their new life were taking shape. William would maintain his residence at Kensington Palace, while Catherine would split time between a renovated wing of the palace and their Norfolk home. The children would move seamlessly between both households, with careful attention paid to maintaining stability in their routines. Their charitable work required some restructuring, with individual patronages being adjusted to reflect their new circumstances. However, many organizations specifically requested that they continue working together, appreciating the unique perspective they brought as separated parents who remained committed to cooperative co-parenting. 1 month after the announcement, Catherine attended a school visit alone for the first time since her marriage. The children she met were curious about her new status, asking direct questions that adult interviewers would never dare pose. "Are you happier now?" asked an 8-year-old named Sophie during a reading session. "I'm more honest now," Catherine replied. And honesty usually leads to happiness, even when it's difficult at first. The wisdom in her simple answer resonated with teachers and parents who had accompanied the children, many of whom were navigating their own complex family situations. William, meanwhile, was discovering that his individual royal duties allowed him to focus more intently on issues he was passionate about, particularly environmental conservation and mental health awareness. Speaking to a group of veterans about the importance of seeking help when needed, he drew openly on his own recent experiences. Sometimes strength means admitting that the path you're on isn't working, he told them. It takes courage to change direction, but it's often the most responsible choice you can make for everyone involved. As winter turned to spring, both William and Catherine found themselves settling into their new normal. Their children were thriving with the increased attention from parents who were now fully present during their time together, rather than distracted by marital tensions. The final farewell they had been approaching had arrived not with drama but with grace, not with bitterness but with mutual respect and genuine concern for their family's well-being. They had demonstrated that love could evolve beyond traditional marriage while maintaining its essential qualities of care, support, and shared commitment to what mattered most. 6 months after their separation announcement, William and Catherine met for coffee at a small cafe in Norfolk, near their former family home. It had become their monthly tradition, a chance to coordinate their children's schedules and maintain the friendship that had emerged from their marriage's end. To onlookers, they appeared to be any divorced couple successfully co-parenting, though the discreet security presence reminded observers of their unique circumstances. George made the football team, Catherine shared, stirring honey into her tea. He wanted me to tell you first, before the official announcement. William smiled with genuine pride. He's been practicing every day? Should we go to his first match together? He'd like that, Catherine agreed. Charlotte asked if you could help her with her science project too. Something about astronomy. Apparently, I'm not qualified to discuss planetary movements. These conversations had become easier over time, focused on their children's needs rather than their own complicated emotions. Both had found unexpected freedom in their new arrangement, able to be fully present as parents without the distraction of maintaining a struggling marriage. William had thrown himself into environmental advocacy with renewed passion, launching an ambitious climate initiative that combined royal patronage with technological innovation. Without the need to coordinate every decision with a spouse, he could pursue causes with the single-minded focus that had characterized his military service. Catherine, meanwhile, had expanded her work in early childhood development, establishing a research foundation that studied the long-term impacts of family structure on children's emotional development. Her own experience had given her insights that proved valuable to other families navigating separation and divorce. Speaking of which, Catherine said, the foundation received an interesting request. A documentary producer wants to interview families who've handled separation with dignity. Apparently, we've become some kind of model for conscious uncoupling in the public eye. William laughed at the terminology. Are you considering it? I think I am, Catherine replied. If our experience can help other families realize that love doesn't have to end when marriage does, maybe it's worth the additional scrutiny. Their conversation was interrupted by a text from Charlotte, who was staying with Catherine that week. She had forgotten her clarinet at William's residence and needed it for orchestra practice. Without discussion, they both stood to retrieve it, falling into the comfortable rhythm of shared parenting that had replaced their romantic partnership. During the drive to Kensington Palace, William asked about Catherine's recent trip to Kenya, where she had been researching educational programs for disadvantaged children. Travel had been one of the casualties of their marriage's final years. The complexity of coordinating two people's schedules had made international work increasingly difficult. It was extraordinary, Catherine said, her enthusiasm evident. There's a program in Nairobi where divorced mothers are supporting each other through small business cooperatives. These women are showing their children that family breakdown doesn't mean personal failure. William appreciated how their separation had allowed Catherine to pursue international work that genuinely excited her. During their marriage's troubled period, she had turned down several opportunities because of their domestic obligations. At the palace, they found Charlotte in the music room, practicing her clarinet with the intense concentration she brought to everything she loved. She looked up when her parents entered, smiling at the sight of them together. Are you staying for dinner, Mummy? She asked hopefully. Catherine looked at William, who nodded. If your father doesn't mind the company. Family dinners had become special occasions rather than stressful obligations. Without the undercurrent of marital tension, the children relaxed into their natural personalities, sharing stories from school and asking for help with homework. Louis regaled them with details of his latest art project, while George updated them on his plans for the upcoming school holidays. After dinner, As they walked through the palace gardens together, William and Catherine reflected on how their family dynamics had actually improved since their separation. The children seem more secure, William observed. I think they were picking up on our stress more than we realized. Or maybe we're just better parents when we're not trying to be a married couple at the same time, Catherine suggested. We can focus entirely on them when we're with them. Their separation had generated extensive media coverage over the months, but the tone had gradually shifted from scandal to admiration as the public witnessed their successful co-parenting. Opinion polls showed surprising support for their approach, particularly among younger adults who appreciated their modern take on family responsibility. A year after their separation, William and Catherine were invited to speak at a conference on modern family structures. Standing together on stage, they fielded questions from social workers, family therapists, and other professionals who worked with families in transition. What advice would you give to couples considering separation? Asked a marriage counselor from Birmingham. Catherine answered first. Remember that ending a marriage doesn't mean ending a family. If you have children together, you'll be co-parents for life. The question is whether you want to be successful co-parents or struggling married people. William added, we learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is give each other permission to grow in different directions. Fighting to save a marriage that's not working doesn't serve anyone, especially children. The questions continued for over an hour, touching on everything from maintaining boundaries to handling holiday traditions. Both William and Catherine found the discussion energizing, as if their difficult experience had gained meaning through helping others navigate similar challenges. Their individual royal duties had also evolved in unexpected ways. William's environmental work had gained international recognition, with several Commonwealth countries specifically requesting his involvement in climate initiatives. Catherine's Early Childhood Development Foundation had become a model for evidence-based family policy, consulted by governments worldwide. We're probably more effective as representatives of the Crown now than we were as a married couple, William remarked to his father during one of their weekly meetings. The king had initially worried about the constitutional implications of their separation, but the positive public response had surprised palace officials. Letters to the royal household overwhelmingly supported their decision, with many writers sharing their own experiences of successful divorce and co-parenting. On a crisp October evening, exactly 18 months after their separation announcement, William and Catherine attended George's school play together. Sitting in the audience with other parents, they watched their eldest son perform with confidence and joy, secure in the knowledge that both his parents were there to support him. During intermission, another parent commented on how well-adjusted their children seemed. You've both handled this beautifully, she said. My own divorce was much messier, and I sometimes wonder what I could have done differently. Catherine smiled at the woman's honesty. We learned that putting the children first means putting our own pride aside. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. After the play, the family went for ice cream, a tradition that had survived the separation intact. The children chattered about the performance while William and Catherine made plans for Charlotte's upcoming birthday party and Louis's sports day. Walking back to their cars later that evening, William and Catherine paused for a moment outside the school. Thank you, William said quietly. For what? Catherine asked. For making this work. For being an amazing co-parent. For showing me that love doesn't always have to look like marriage. Catherine smiled, feeling grateful for the friendship that had emerged from their marriage's end. Thank you for being brave enough to admit when something wasn't working and wise enough to help fix it. Their final farewell had not been the dramatic confrontation that many had expected. Instead, it had been a gradual transformation from struggling spouses to successful co-parents, from duty-bound partners to authentic friends. They had demonstrated that modern royalty could embrace change while maintaining dignity, that families could evolve while preserving love. As they drove away in separate cars toward their separate homes, both William and Catherine felt the satisfaction of having handled an impossible situation with integrity. Their children were thriving, their individual work was flourishing, and their relationship, though no longer romantic, remained strong and supportive. The fairy tale ending had been replaced by something more valuable, a real-life example of how love could evolve beyond traditional expectations while maintaining its essential qualities of care, respect, and shared commitment to what mattered most. In choosing to say goodbye to their marriage, they had discovered a new way to say hello to their future as a family redefined, but not diminished. Their story had moved millions not because it followed the expected script, but because it had the courage to write a new one where ending could also mean beginning. where failure could become wisdom, and where love could be measured not by duration but by the grace with which it adapted to serve those who mattered most.